let's get into some box office woes.
Yeah.
All right. Since we have Odin on here, I'm looking forward to getting his take on this. But basically, we have some big budget headaches. This article from Variety says why Indiana Jones 5 and Mission Impossible 7 are struggling to make a profit. And this is actually a really interesting article, and I'd recommend everyone who's watching go check this out. Link in the description. But it's basically saying that Hollywood is spending too much money on these movies and they're not making enough back. I found a couple of parts of this a little interesting. So first of all, it says that sources familiar with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning's financial model say that it will break even if it can hit 600 million at the global box office. And I believe that's already hit like something around like 523 million. So it's not too far from breaking even. But I just found it interesting that that's the number that they've set out as the break even point for the movie. And then Universal's high octane Fast 10, whose production budget was $340 million. Despite earning $704 million at the global box office this summer, that film barely crawled into the black and will post a modest profit, according to sources familiar with the financing. So $340 million budget at $704 million, it's just barely broken even and has a small profit. Some studio executives estimate that the movies that were in production when actors hit the picket lines in July have seen their production costs rise by as much as $2 million a month. So all that stuff that got put on pause as the writers and actors went on strike, it's costing them $2 million a month just to do nothing. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Finally, I found this final paragraph of the article very interesting because it's basically talking about how the box office has seen its fair share of winners too. And they mention Oppenheimer, Barbie, and the Super Mario Brothers movie. But the thing that they leave out, I found the most interesting, which is The Sound of Freedom, which is arguably the most profitable movie of the year so far.
Hands down.
That Hollywood has put out. And they completely neglected to mention that. So I found that kind of interesting. So Odin, are you as surprised as I am about the break-even points that they're listing for these movies?
Oh, big time. I mean, because I guess one could argue in defense of them, devil's advocate, that that's what they've been told by the studios, that the studios are saying that's the number that they're looking at. So for all we know, the studios could be saying, well, if we get to this amount box office wise, we're confident that we'll get X amount on Blu-ray or X amount on, streaming, because for at least with Paramount with Mission Impossible, they will be able to sell some streaming rights internationally since Paramount is not in as many countries as, say, Disney Plus is. But that's still a bit of a stretch, right? You can't say that a film like that, which cost almost $300 million to make, only needs to make 2 times its budget to break even. That's just not really in the realm of possibility. The fact that I use a 2.5 times budget for my break even, and many people say that's way too low. Again, it's always funny to me whenever these articles come from, and typically it's like Collider, right? I actually called Collider out probably like within the last week or two several times because they have consistently put out articles claiming these just bizarre, quote, break even points. Because the thing that people don't oftentimes realize when it comes to the box office is that, a couple things. One, the production budget does not include marketing. And typically you're going to see at least half of whatever the budget is, add that in addition to, right? So about 1.5 times the budget is your total cost. That's actual budget with marketing cost. But we also know that marketing has cost a lot more. So there are some studios that have been spending even more on marketing than they typically would otherwise. And I think it's films like, Little Mermaid, for instance, they're spending north of $150 million on just marketing alone, which is getting close to almost the cost of the movie itself. So for them to say that is already on the surface just completely fabricated. And then you have to take into account they only get, roughly 50-60% of the box office, depending on, where they are and where the vast majority of their money is coming from. And so that's why if you look at it, it's close to 3 times the budget these days is about your break even. So, I mean, I am a big fan of the latest Mission Impossible film, but even I'm looking at that saying, look, the film's doing much better down the stretch than it has any right to because it's a great film. Like, it is a phenomenal movie, but the numbers just are not there to suggest that it has any hope of actually breaking even. It's even worse for Dial of Destiny because they claim it cost $300 million, but even some articles like from Variety and Deadline have said they think it actually probably cost north of $400 million. And so you're talking about 2 very different movies in that, yes, on paper, they seem to cost the same amount, but $200 million more has been made by Mission Impossible. And also, in all likelihood, they spent a lot more on Dial of Destiny than what's being indicated. So it's just laughable to me when they mention these kinds of numbers because, yeah, we're talking about massive flops. Even Fast 10, they mentioned Fast 10 lost money. Fast 10 needed to make like $850 million to break even, and it didn't hit that. And again, if they want to try to argue post theatrical money, that's a whole different ball game. I don't really follow that all that much. That's not really my wheelhouse. But as far as like actual box office, like in release box office, there's no way. It's also interesting they did not mention other winners this year, like Across the Spider-Verse, which made money, and even a film like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a film you could arguably say made money or at least broke even. So it's interesting that they're leaving those out in addition to Sound of Freedom, which compared to budget, like as far as like percentage budget to net made from a movie, it absolutely is the like one of the highest grossing of this year, right? Not in total amount made, but just in comparison to your budget. Yeah, I think it's very telling. And of course, why would Hollywood want to give that film any praise? They've just been downplaying it and destroying it every chance that they can, especially people like Tony over at Deadline.
Yep.
Fuck Tony.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Yeah. So you know what's interesting is that a lot of these movies that are coming out now with these like just ginormous budgets, things like Fast X, Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones. These were all COVID era productions, which basically had to shut down, and therefore we talked about how just the writer strikes costing productions $2 million per month. Well, with these things, like you had even more expense associated with their kind of like pauses, I guess you could say, which is one of the reasons why we're suddenly seeing like $300 and $400 million budget reports for these films going forward. And I think Hollywood knows that that's not a sustainable number. So Brian, what's your take on this? Do you think what do you think is like the sweet spot for like a Hollywood blockbuster film in terms of budget?
Yeah, I always thought it was going to be double their budget, but it makes sense that it would be, 3 times or whatever, because there's the budget to make the movie and there's a budget to market the movie. There's other costs to consider. So, you always know that there's more cost than what they're telling you, as far as their budget's concerned, especially with these like really big giant movies. Seems like every movie now is like their goal is to make $1 billion. So if they think they have a shot of doing that, they have no problem spending, $300 million to make the movie, another $200 million to market the movie. And when they make, $380 million or whatever, well, that might have been 80 million past their regular budget, but what about the other $200 million in cost? And that's why they always complain about them being failures or bombs, because if you continually make movies that you expect to make $1 billion, I think that's a losing strategy. Especially like there's a lot of superhero fatigue and like Hollywood fatigue in general. There's very little new things happening. So a movie like Sound of Freedom that actually had almost a negative marketing budget and an amazingly low production budget, especially considering that they bought the movie from Disney. If I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, Odin here. They bought the movie for less than what
there were so many different like people who were saying different. So what I've heard as far as listening to the director speak was that it was produced under 20th Century Fox. And then when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, they got the film's rights, essentially. They sat on it. And then the filmmaker actually went and got the rights back. And I want to say it maybe cost close to maybe 15 million or so. So you think just about how much he spent and now how much money this film has made since. Right. It's a win-win for him and the studio that he's now working with.
Those are clear winners. Let's say you have a movie that makes $1 billion, but it costs you almost $650 million to get to that point, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in that same time, with that same amount of effort, you could put out 5 movies with a $15, $20 million budget and make $100 million a pop. I think the big giant trying to catch fire thing with the superhero movies and these other sort of franchise props, I think it's a failing strategy. I think that it used to be a thing, and COVID happened, and people wised up a little bit, and they're continuing to put out just sort of garbage nonsense has made it so that most people do not trust the theater experience, especially considering that most movies come out within 6 weeks on streaming anyways. So if you have any any thought that you can wait for this, then you can save yourself $120 and watch it essentially for free, because even though you're paying for the streaming service, you're probably not canceling it anyways. So that's fair.
So Matt Vader, there's an added component to these ballooning production costs, which is basically, as it's come to be known thanks to our administration, Bidenomics, in which the value of the dollar is continuing going down because of inflation. Yeah. And so you have a situation where these movies are costing more to make, and the money that they bring in isn't worth as much as it used to. Well, so what's your take on this? Do you think Hollywood needs to basically wake up and start looking at the dollars and cents?
I don't think Hollywood probably knows how to cut budgets. I think they're probably still using the premium bologna on the tables versus the generic stuff on the lunch tables. You know what I'm saying? There's Fiji water, and then there's the stuff you buy at Walmart. They need to start switching to the stuff you buy at Walmart instead of giving everybody Fiji. That'll take that $2 million a month thing down to probably 500,000 just on Fiji water alone. I think it's the whole Fiji effect. I think I'm going to coin that hashtag, the Fiji effect, because I know here in Vegas we charge people like $80 a bottle in the high limit room for Fiji water. It's ridiculous. So yeah, no, I don't think they're very realistic in Hollywood with their budgets. I think it's probably kind of like the government, right, with their $6 million toilets, right? Am I off?
Remember that line from Independence Day? He's like, "How much does it cost for a toilet? $20 million for a toilet? $20 million for a wrench?"
Yeah, you're talking about the creative accounting.
Yeah,
but we all know Bidenomics isn't a real thing. It's just the ramblings of a dementia infused crazy old man.
Yeah, it is, Jack. Come on,
come on. I'm gonna fall off my bike. So, yeah,
Bidenomics. Yeah, I hate it when you see some of these people get up there, these speakers, and I'm like, "There's no inflation. This is a natural part of." What are you talking about, dude? A dozen eggs cost $9 right now.
Yeah,
there's 100%. I just got back from the grocery store before coming here. I didn't get very much stuff, and it was like $115.
Yeah,
I got some chips, some vegetables. One of those clearance meats, and I'm walking out. I'm like, how's over $100? Clearly, inflation is on the,
and it's not
McDonald's. $25 for like 2 combos,
and it's not just the things you need. Movie tickets too.
Right.
Yes.
We're seeing that average
gasoline,
$13 or so. Right.
Oh, $15 right now at AMC. I was like, wait, this is the standard ticket? This is not even like anything special. It's just a regular movie ticket.
$20 for popcorn. Yeah.
I want to know how much Mike spends on groceries a week.
Well, speaking of Mike, so you're in the independent film space, and with Hollywood, they have to deal with like unions. They have all types of regulations, insurance, carrying costs, all types of stuff, which obviously inflates the budget. So, what's your take on Hollywood spending upwards of like 200 to 300 million per movie just on the budgets, when obviously they could do like a $30 million movie just as good with the technology available and probably make way more money?
Yeah. I mean, so I know some people in the industry that have talked to me about some of the stuff that they get really frustrated about. And I think what Matt Vader said, that like the premium bologna or like Fiji water and stuff, it's this attitude of, there definitely is like an attitude of entitlement as far as like, well, we expect this kind of treatment and we expect that kind of treatment, but also, and I'm not attacking unions specifically, but the idea is a lot of times these unions enforce these attitudes of, well, my people need this, this, and this. And so what you run into, I mean, from the independent space, and I've known people that have worked on films that have had union people step in and go, hey, I want to work with you guys or whatever. And then the union goes, well, they need this, 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 and this. And they're like, I can't afford that. Or, I mean, one of the things I learned, with doing screenwriting and stuff like that, they're like, yeah, if you work for a union and you go to sell your script for, you have to get approval, and the union has to say, okay, yeah, I guess we're okay with you taking less than what you're supposed to, and blah, blah, blah. And, so it's a mess, because it almost lends itself to naturally inflating the budget when you have these groups of people and these entities making these demands about what the treatment of their people are, which, I mean, everybody wants to be treated fairly. But like you said, drinking a bottle of Fiji water or drinking a bottle of value water, it doesn't make a difference. Like, that stuff isn't important. But I think on the other side of things, I know that there is, I think, a bit of a formula, and I think in these Hollywood studios' heads of like, if I spend this much money, I'm more likely to make this much. You have to, it's almost seems like it's weird. It's counterintuitive, but to them, it's more risky to have a smaller budget, than to just say, well, we know if we spend X amount of money, this is what we're going to get back, but that's not working anymore. And unfortunately, I think a lot of these companies and a lot of these studios are too big and they're too set in their ways to like really course correct. One of the nice things about being independent is like, if we look at trying to go a certain route with something and it costs too much, we can just say, well, okay, we're not going to do that. I guess we'll have to find a cheaper way to do it, and sometimes that breeds what I like necessity is the mother of invention. It's like, okay, well, how are we going to do this when we don't have access to that? And then, so sometimes that lends itself to making better creative choices or doing something unique or doing something interesting with your story. Like when I write stories right now for what we're doing, I write them with a very small budget in mind because we don't have $15 million to throw at a film, So I think that the idea of smaller budget films almost terrifies these companies, because it means that they do have to cut back on things. And I don't think that they have even ever considered what it means to budget or really like actually value something. I mean, you think about some of these movies like The Flash, where they had a budget. They said, this is what we're going to do. And then the reshoots cost X amount of money. I think they did like what? 4 reshoots or 4 different times where they had to do reshoots and bring back Ezra Miller every single time to do these reshoots and stuff. Yeah, I just think they're set in their ways. I never want to see people out of work. I never want to see people lose their jobs, but I would much rather see some of these studios go under and see smaller studios that actually have a little bit more practicality in them. I mean, look at what A24 does. They're making money hand over fist. And even when they have a flop, they're like, well, we spent $10 million on this movie and we only made $8 million back. Oh, we lost $2 million. It sucks to lose $2 million. I wish I could lose $2 million and not lose sleep at night. But like, they're not in a situation where they have so much overhead that if it doesn't work, the whole thing falls over. And that's the thing. Like, I know some people try to act like these studios aren't in trouble. They're in trouble. Like, it wasn't just COVID that made them in trouble. It was they have consistently been putting out bad products. And in what happened in 2020 was, I think it just gave everybody a chance to go, hey, you know what? If I invest $2,000 into my home theater, I can have the same experience. And if the movie isn't good, well, then I only spent $10 on it versus, going out with my family and spending, I mean, if I take me, my wife, both my kids, get popcorn and drinks and stuff like that, it could run on, well over $100 to go see a movie.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the old joke, which is, any movie that's less than $100 million, it makes it a lot more difficult for Hollywood to launder money with. But real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Christopher Mays for becoming a member of the channel. That means we need 4 more members during the live stream. Really appreciate you, Christopher Mays. Then we got Salty Saturday superstar Bob Dorsey for $20. Headed to Topeka. Now I got something to listen to. I am a week behind. Fuck Star Trek. Yes.
Yes.
We got Rec Films Montana for $2. Let's see. Last 10 Disney films in 2 years lost $1.865 billion.
Real quick, I want to shout him out. He's actually a part of the Epicverse. That's our editor, Randy. He's an awesome dude. Really awesome dude. Really great editor. So shout out to Randy.
Great guy.
Oh,
Thanks for being here, man.
Appreciate the $2. We got Whiskey Jack. Says, screw you guys. I can't wait for my Latinx representatives on full showcase in Escarabajo Azul. I don't know what that means, but okay, Whiskey Jack.
Brian, you want to translate?
I don't know. I can't translate that.
Okay.
As our resident Latinx, yes. And Christopher Mays for $4.99. A solution to the problem of these bloated budgets is more competition in Hollywood. There's fewer studios now than 20 years ago.
It's true.
And Mike, real quick, I want to get your take on this. We're predicting that in 2024, because of all these production shutdowns, there's going to be like a period of time where there's like no new content coming out for people to consume, which means that they're going to be turning to YouTube and like, more kind of like creators who can get content out quickly that's entertaining and can be consumed easily. What's your prediction for that time period? Do you think that might be a window of opportunity for indie creators and people on YouTube to kind of step up and steal more of Hollywood's thunder?
Yeah. So I have since 2020 encouraged people. I know people, I say this, but I'm going to emphasize this again. I used to tell people all the time on my streams, like right now, 2020, right then and before, and after, this is the perfect time to start something. Like you have to, because like these studios are struggling. People have opened their eyes to what's going on right now. There is no better time to jump into a creative endeavor, writing a book, writing a comic book, all of these things. And I've been saying this for a while. And then, so this is kind of a bit of a journey, but I promise I'm going somewhere with it. And then, a really small, not very well-known YouTuber named, Eric July or Young Ripa, dropped a comic book and made $3.7 million and kind of blew the doors off of things. And me and Josiah had already been talking about Epic Verse for a while, and and everything. And we looked at each other literally the same day that he dropped it, and I was like, "Dude, we can't wait any longer. We got to go. Like, we got to get this going now." And so, yeah, I say all that to say, I absolutely think that this is the perfect timing. Sometimes life just kind of falls into a good spot, and to see these studios struggling and to hear people are complaining and frustrated about the lack of creativity and the lack of good stories, all of that is helpful. But it's even more helpful when all of a sudden those people that weren't making good stuff in the first place go, well, we're not really making anything right now because we're arguing about money. So I absolutely 100% think if you're an independent creator and things like that, this is the best time to do it. It was kind of one of our strategies is we said, hey, listen, if we get going now on stuff, we're going to run into a situation where some of these studios are not making as much stuff. I mean, Star Wars already announced they're not making as many films. They're waiting. They're not going to have anything out till 2025. Like, this is perfect. This is the perfect opportunity for people like us, people that want to make movies and stuff, to put something out. So yeah, I think there's not a better time than now. And the worst thing that anybody could do is overthink something and hesitate. I'm not saying don't make quality, but if you can get quality things out, thing is, you can make stuff a lot quicker than some of these Hollywood studios can make it as an independent too, because there's way less red tape. Go ahead.
And I find it very entertaining that you refer to Eric July as a little known YouTuber at the time with like his 300,000 subscriber channel and his music career and all that stuff.
Well, there's also other people out there that are making content and making independent things, like Jay Drunk Pupio's in the chat right now. Mm-hmm. He's got his Achromatic Blue book.
Achromatic Chronicles. Yeah, it's a great book, by the way. I loved it. Yeah. And I've said this before on Tuesday Night's Main Event. I got that book. I got an early copy. Mm-hmm. And I handed my daughter said, "Well, what's that?" I didn't even hesitate to hand it to her. I have to, but the thing is, if there's a new television show out, I don't let my kids just watch it. I don't let them passively watch. I can't let them passively watch entertainment now because I don't know what they're saying in it. So I have to sit down. I have to watch it with them. I have to make sure it's okay. I have to get feedback from other people that have maybe watched it with their kids, things like that. Whereas before, there used to be a time where like I didn't have to think about it. I wasn't worried about letting, my parents didn't have to worry about me watching Mr. Rogers or watching Reading Rainbow or watching some of these shows. You could just sit down and watch them. And
old school Disney and
old school Disney. Yeah. Yeah. And nowadays you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can let you watch this, because nowadays it's not even just they're so insipid about it that you might have like a show that's really amazing and really good, and then the last episode has like it's just full of stuff trying to teach kids about, well, it's okay to blah blah blah, or it's okay to do this, or and you're like, what? That doesn't even have anything to do with the story that just happened. And that's the thing, like right now, we're gonna be able to make content that we can tell you up front, like, this is what it's going to be about, because I don't have anything to hide. I just want to make good movies. I just want to make good content. All Ripple wants to do is make good comic books. All Jay wants to do is make a good story. And now we don't, and the fact that you don't have to worry means that you don't have to hesitate in buying that stuff. And that's what's happening a lot of times with movies now. A lot of people are just waiting for the word of mouth. Look what happened with Guardians. It didn't do great in the beginning, and then word of mouth kind of built it over time. But we're also seeing movies that, like Top Gun Maverick and things, or Sound of Freedom, that didn't seem like they were going to do super well at first, and then word of mouth has built that. And that's almost like the new way of doing things now, is word of mouth is almost the way that films get, see success, because people can't trust these studios to put out good stuff anymore.
Real quick, so I just want to point out, Whiskey Jack says Escarabajo Azul is blue beetle in Spanish, according to Google Translate. So that word I couldn't pronounce is actually just blue beetle.
Escarabajo.
Escarabajo. Escarabajo. Okay, yeah, I'm not a,
Escarabajo Azul.
I'm the destroyer of words.
Hey guys, if you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and comment below on your favorite video as well. That goes a long way with helping us boost our channel and get out there in front of more people. And it lets YouTube know that we're doing something right. And if you want to catch us live, we go live 2 times a week, once on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time and on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. So join us there in the chat. We will see you on the live stream. Stay salty.